Hello and welcome to the Fundamental Podcast. In today's episode, I'm speaking to Marc Clifford. Now, Marc is the owner of a six-figure online marketing agency doing between 50 and 100K per month in revenue. And he's here to have a conversation around how can you best grow your online business. This applies whether it's an agency or other business model. What are the real challenges behind growing a business of that caliber? What are the personal challenges that you might face? Things like imposter syndrome and what the reality is of being an online owner and entrepreneur. So if you're interested in learning how to grow your online business, how to deal with the psychological challenges that come with that, then this is going to be a great episode for you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. All right, let's jump into it. Hey, Marc, welcome to the Fundamental Podcast. It's great to have you on.
Morning, Joel. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. It's a beautiful day today. And today on the episode, I'd love to have a chat with you about a couple of things. Men's mental health, I think, is an important subject to get into around this time of year, and also your expertise when it comes to building an online business and online paid ads agency. So I wanted to start out the conversation by asking you, you've built this successful agency. Firstly, I'd love to hear some insights into, where is your agency right now? How is it performing? But more than that, I wanted to ask, how do you feel about yourself as an agency owner? Like, do you see yourself as just an agency owner? Do you still have imposter syndrome, even though you've experienced so much success with it? Where are you kind of at, both with the business side of things, but also your role in the business?
That is a great question. So with the business side of things, so the agency, we've been going since 2020. We currently sit around about the 60 to 70K a month mark in terms of revenue. Profit margins, obviously with an agency, we don't have physical offices. We don't have, a lot of overheads in the business. So the margins are typically quite high, which is, I suppose, the beauty of an online agency. We've actually been able to kind of expand past that as well. In the last couple of years, we've been exploring M&A and how to buy other agencies to kind of form a bit of a super group, which is something that's really, really interesting and has taken me down a completely kind of different entrepreneurial path than I ever really expected, I think. So from the business side of things, it's quite good. It's not without its challenges. Don't get me wrong. Like it's a very good position to be in. And I realized that I've kind of been a bit more fortunate with most of the opportunities I've had. But at the same time, it comes with its challenges, and it's not easy by any means. In terms of how I view myself as an agency owner, I think, I see myself as an entrepreneur first and not just an agency owner, because there's a couple of different bits that I do with the M&A side and the coaching side. But I kind of see myself as more of an entrepreneur than just agency owner, but always, a father and a husband first. That's the kind of core of who I am. My family are everything to me, and everything around that kind of helps support and grow the family. And you asked a very, very interesting question about imposter syndrome as well. And yes, imposter syndrome is still something that is very, very real, I think, no matter at what kind of level you're at. I mean, I don't have regular access to, the guys that are doing huge, huge numbers in the space. Think of your Hormozis, your Gary V's. But I would imagine that they kind of still get similar kind of emotions. I originally thought imposter syndrome was just something you kind of got at the start. A lot of guys in the online business space, for some reason, the arbitrary number everyone wants to reach first time around is 10K a month.
Yeah.
Right? If I make 10K a month, my life changes and it's different. And to a degree it is. But once you kind of hit that 10K a month, that's when you kind of hit that imposter syndrome. A lot of people, certainly I, had never had that type of money coming into my bank account every month. Didn't really know what to do with it. Didn't really know how to manage it. Also didn't know how to manage the business past that level and how to change, and kind of felt like I was a bit of an imposter. Some of the doors that open, some of the rooms that you get to go into, the people you meet, the experiences you have. I remember once being upgraded to a suite in a pretty fancy hotel in London, and kind of having a bit of a breakdown and a cry, because I was like, this doesn't happen to people like me. And I feel like that was the imposter syndrome speaking. And once you kind of learn to overcome that a little bit, you then realize that it happens at every level.
Right.
So when we hit our first 100K month back in January and February of this year. We've scaled down a little bit since then, but I hit that and I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? You know, the leadership and everything we'd exhibited to get us to that point hadn't changed, but it was because of this arbitrary number. I was like, what happens now? Like, how do I become that person that runs 100K a month agency? And really
Was it like a big, hitting that 100K a month, did it actually like change something for you as far as the perception of who you needed to be in order to run that?
Yes and no. So there was no kind of big hurrah or big feeling around it. I feel like because when you do it, you kind of build up to it, and you kind of you're on the cusp of that number anyway. But when you hit it, there's certainly the expectation of running a 7-figure business and running a 6-figure business kind of needs a different version of you at the top.
Right.
But you've kind of built yourself there. You don't get there by accident. I feel like anyone can make 10K a month online. Not everyone can make 100K a month online. So you do have to kind of create a different version of yourself, whether that's just, with your habits, with your leadership style, with, some of the things and you have to do or sacrifice. So yeah, it's a bit of an adjustment. And I feel like that's why a lot of people that originally attain that kind of wealth, and you see it a lot in the agency space, don't stay there because they don't elevate themselves as a leader and as an entrepreneur. They just kind of let the ego take over.
Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest difference? Like, what do you need as a 100K agency owner as opposed to a 10K? Like, what is that differentiating? What do people need to develop in themselves in order to be able to handle that level?
That's again another great question. I think there's a couple of really, really big things that need to change. The ability to be able to delegate and to trust is absolutely huge, I feel. At 10K, I was still running a lot of stuff myself because I didn't think anyone was good enough to be able to do what I was doing to the same standard, which is a lie. And anyone who thinks the same is just lying to themselves. It's just because there's not another you. There's only one. Sorry, excuse me. There's only one Marc Clifford. There's only one Joel Rickard. But it doesn't mean that there's not someone else who is perfectly capable of doing what you do. And again, I think that comes from an insecurity around the delivery of actually what you're doing. So if you don't have the correct systems and processes in place, the actual delivery of the product to the client is going to take an effect. And if you don't have the confidence in that, typically you don't have the confidence to hire into that. So being able to delegate and trust both the individual that you're bringing in to help you and the processes that you've built around that are a key factor. I think the other big thing is discipline. It's kind of banded around as a word a lot in the coaching space, but being able to have the discipline to do what you need to do on the days where you really don't feel like doing it is massive. I mean, everyone has days I have days like that where, I wake up and I'm just like, I don't want to go and have to face my emails. I don't want to have to take that sales call. I don't want to have to deal with this client.
Right.
I just want to kind of sit in my pants and vegetate and do whatever. And everyone has those days, regardless of what your income level is, regardless of what your job is. But being able to have the discipline of turning around and going, right, I'm going to do what I need to do today, even if it's just the bare minimum, just to keep that needle moving every day.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because you're right. Discipline is this thing that just gets thrown about. And I think I'm curious to know, are there particular things you tell yourself or that you do in those moments where you really don't want to get off the couch and, get out of your pants and get dressed and things that help you to be disciplined? Because discipline is this term, but I think for people that struggle to be disciplined in those moments, maybe there's something that you're doing that could help them, that they could also do, that would help them get off the couch.
Yeah. So there's 3 kind of mantras around discipline that I believe in. Two are from my time in the military, and one is since I've had my son. So the first one is to do the right thing on a difficult day. So even when you're having those difficult days, knowing what you should be doing and being able to do that. The other one, I used to cringe at this a lot when I was in the army, especially as a junior rank. But it's the standard you walk by is the standard you accept. So if you allow those things to slip and not get done to the correct kind of level when they should be, that's the new standard you accept. And if you start to let that slip, your standards drop and drop and drop. And then the third kind of mantra is, someone actually said this to me the week after my son was born. We were having a bit of an issue with payments and stuff like that. And he phoned me up. He's a dad as well. And he'd phoned me up and he said, look, I know I owe you a bit of cash. This is the situation I'm in, but I want to kind of put something in place to make sure that you get it. And, I'm paying my dues. And I said to him, I said, it takes a lot of balls to make a phone call like that, especially when you're on the wrong side of something. And he said to me, you'll understand this now. He said, but my son is watching, and what kind of example does that set? And I feel like that kind of really cemented it for me. In terms of how to kind of get that moving, there's a couple of different techniques that I've been taught over the years when you really, really can't be asked to kind of do anything. First one is the 10-to-1 method. So kind of make a bit of a mental list of what you need to do, put in the hardest thing first, count yourself down from 10. When you get down from 10 to 1, you get up and you go and do that thing. And often doing that first hardest thing, I think it's called Eating the Frog. There's a book about it somewhere. Out of the way, just kind of builds a bit of compound momentum, and it kind of moves on. And the other one I've done is like a face dip technique. So that actually come from when I was on therapy once. But just being able to have a bit of a reset, some cold water, submerging your face in cold water for as long as you can hold your breath, kind of resets your brain a little bit, releases a bit of dopamine, makes you feel a little bit better, kind of gives you that reset. Even if it's only for half an hour, 45 minutes to go and get those tasks done, just being able to do that and reset your brain a little bit is a great advantage, I think.
That's a great idea. I've heard of that, but I've never actually tried it outside of doing ice baths and things. But it has also something to do with triggering the dive response in the body and lowering. I think it's something like you essentially lower your stress levels, calm your nervous system to a degree.
Correct. Yeah, it's the cortisol level that comes down and the dopamine level that goes up. So it's more prevalent when you're doing like submersion therapy, so the ice baths and stuff like that. But essentially when cold water therapy and the dive response releases the same amount of dopamine that a hit of cocaine gives you, but it lasts for something like 30 to 40 times longer. So the high of cocaine and the dopamine peaks at about 6 minutes, I think. After a 3-minute ice bath, your dopamine is still at that level 4 hours later. So it's just kind of helping trigger that response, release the cortisol. And again, it just kind of helps you reset, like you say, yeah.
Yeah, and you get that from even just putting your face in cold water as opposed to, having to go out and do a full ice bath, huh?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, it's actually a great idea, because I think there's so much awareness around the things like sauna and ice baths and how we can train our bodies to do what we, our minds want to do, or train our minds to do what we want them to do. But sometimes those sorts of things can feel unattainable or just a little bit too impractical. Not everybody has access to a sauna or an ice bath, but knowing you can just, fill up a bucket or a bowl of cold water and put your face in it for 30 seconds is, I think it's something everybody can do, especially if you're struggling to otherwise take action on the things that you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned therapy and things, so you obviously have some experience with struggling with your own mind. What was that struggle, if you don't mind talking about it? Because I think there's other guys out there, men and women, who are perhaps in the same situation that you were once in.
Yeah. So for me, I suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder from my time in the military. But off of the back of that, there's been a kind of litany of other things that's led into anxiety, depression. There was a couple of attempts on my own life back in 2019 and 2020, which kind of has prompted the response into therapy. For me, medication never really worked. it kind of, I understand the need for it, and I understand that it works for some people, but for me, I still had those thoughts and feelings. It just made me that numb to kind of emotion and movement almost, that I just couldn't be asked to do anything about it because it just kind of suppresses everything.
Right.
My wife and I were talking about this the other day because it's kind of around the dates of a couple of things happening. And she was like, I shared a photo and she was like, you're a completely different person now to who you were in that photo. Because of the medication I was on, I was kind of like a zombie. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd need 3 or 4 hours just to be able to kind of function and be cognitive and be able to hold a conversation before I could really do anything.
Yeah.
Which, when you're living with someone and someone that you care about, to just see them kind of being a zombie for a few hours a day, isn't great. And then in the evenings when you're taking that medication again to help you get back to sleep, it was pretty instantaneous. There's been a couple of times when I'd take my tablets, I'd go to the fridge to get a drink, and I'd have just fallen asleep, stood up in the kitchen, and over the place. So yeah, it's it's pretty rough. But yeah, so that kind of led into the world of therapy. At first, I thought it was a little bit woo woo, and this is just a load of crap, and I need to man up. I think that's something a lot of men kind of would tell ourselves intrinsically. But as I kind of lent into it and explored it a little bit more, explored different types of therapy, tried different therapists, and kind of really lent into the experience, I realized that actually just being able to talk and verbalize what I'm feeling and how my perception of the world is in that moment really, really makes a difference to someone who is completely impartial and genuinely cares for the most part as well. I was very lucky that the people that I spoke to as my therapists all were very, very good therapists, but also very, very nice individuals that really, really helped me kind of relax and be at ease with it. But you have to let those people in as well.
Mm. And you found that process just, is that something where you were able to go for a sort of a set number of weeks or months, and then you're like, okay, I've kind of got things now, I can carry on my own? Or
yeah, so there was a couple of different avenues that I tried. So when I first kind of became unwell, it was during COVID. So it made access to therapy. I think it made it a bit more accessible, and you had the likes of BetterHelp kind of be created here in the UK, which, if anyone's watching from outside the UK and doesn't know, it's an online therapy service. You can just use it on your phone, connect you with a therapist anywhere, anytime that you need. And I think that's a great tool. But for me, I didn't engage over the Zooms. It was very easy for me to just kind of, you can hide a lot of body language. You can kind of distract yourself quite easily. So the second we were able to get back into the face-to-face stuff, I did. And being able to kind of have that human experience and contact with someone really, really helped. But in terms of how it kind of worked for me, I found that the different therapists that I saw were specialists in different areas, and it was kind of like a progressive journey. So the first individual I saw was helping me just understand what PTSD is, what depression is, how the brain works, how my emotions work, and it's the fact that it's just a reaction to something, and helping me realize that and understand that helped me realize my behaviors a lot after.
Mm-hmm.
So because I knew that the emotion that I was having was just a response to a trigger and how that trigger worked, kind of knew better how to deal with it.
Right.
Which meant that when we got to the actual trauma focused stuff, where I could talk and process what was going on, I was able to help myself feel a bit safer in talking about that and keep myself a lot safer, but B, be able to process that in a more logical way. Because for me, I just knew I was trying to file a memory in my filing system.
Right.
So it was a very good process. Typically, each course lasted between 12 to 16 weeks, with the option to obviously extend it if I really, really needed. But I mean, even today, I'm not on any form of trauma-focused therapy, but even now I have kind of a session a month with actually an old army friend of mine who's turned into a therapist, just to kind of process and digest and check in and make sure that I'm still kind of giving myself a mental MOT every month.
It's a good idea, good way of thinking of it as well. I'm curious because you're in the online ad agency space, an online entrepreneur. Do you find, and you said that you really felt that the in-person work was the most beneficial for you. I'm wondering and I ask this because I'm also in this situation where I'm building a business online and find that having those in-person connections it's not so easy to find those because we spend so much time trying to do something online that we miss out on, the otherwise those in-person interactions. And I think I've noticed in myself that that's been to my detriment. And I was just wondering whether A, is that something that you find as well as a problem, and B, do you have systems or ways of counteracting that?
Yeah, it's lonely, isn't it? Running a
Yeah.
business, especially if you don't have a business partner. It is very, very lonely because it's just you and your laptop, and you can have your music or your videos or whatever playing in the background, and being on calls like this and kind of trying to build that connection. But at the end of the day, you're still sat in a room typically by yourself. I think it's a lot easier now to be able to build that physical connection. So in most major cities around the world, there are co-working spaces that you can go to. You can meet other people that are kind of in the same space as you. The digital nomad kind of era is absolutely booming. I know obviously you travel yourself quite a lot, and especially in kind of the younger generations, doing that is a real kind of big connection point. I mean, we've got guys that we've helped with their agencies that are all over the world now, and I can't kind of keep up with where they're going, and they're building all those kind of human connection touch points. But I think it comes down really to a business level of kind of your day-to-day activity and where you're doing it and you're conducting it. If you can get out to go and meet your clients and deliver some work in person, by all means, absolutely go and do that. We do a lot of workshops in person now where we'll go and meet the clients. We'll do a workshop with their staff. And that's great because you get to meet them, you build the rapport, you build that human connection, and it's great. And it's great for the kind of longevity of your relationship as well. But also wherever you're kind of taking your personal development, your coaching and stuff, being able to do so in a group environment with other individuals is great. I mean, I've just come back off of a retreat in Cyprus where there was 12 or 13 of us, I think, in total in the villa every day, and being able to meet people that you wouldn't have usually met or usually work with, certainly not socialize with in most circles anyway, for a week to be able to build that connection was absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's about being intentional about, like, even when you don't have to meet people in person or you don't have to meet clients in person, actually making that a conscious choice, because not only does it benefit the business, like you were saying, you build up that rapport and a tighter connection that then benefits the business relationship, but it also benefits us when we have that in-person connection with other people.
Yeah, sure.
So you hold your own retreats now or workshops and retreats? Do you host your own retreats now?
Yeah, so we've got our first retreat running in November 2026.
And what's that actually for? What's the kind of the goal of the retreat?
So that's for digital marketing agency owners, SMMA owners, whatever you want to kind of identify yourself as within that space, that are under 30K a month, to kind of come together, do a bit of a smaller group networking, and really kind of put in the systems and processes in place that you need to be able to scale effectively. Doing so in an environment that's away from the business, away from the day-to-day, where you're not kind of getting stuck on client calls or client emails, in a bit of a nicer setting, a warmer setting than the UK in November. And just kind of, delivering that outcome. It's part of a much larger kind of package, but being able to just take that time away to focus on the agency, to put the systems and processes in place so that when you come back from that, you will be in a lot kind of better place in terms of your goals and your clarity, and the foundations that the business is built on, but B, also kind of realizing the different avenues and the potential that's out there. Not a lot of agency owners that sit under 30K a month will go to things like that because they don't think it's attainable for them. Whereas, we've done it at a very, very reasonable price point. We're doing it in a location, so it's going to be held in Dubai. But we're doing it. The location we've got in Dubai is a very good place for young entrepreneurs to be, I believe. So it will kind of open up their eyes to the world of possibility, the world of kind of wealth wider than what's on their laptops. And that's the kind of goal.
Nice. Yeah, I think also, that point of opening up our eyes to what's possible is like so crucial. I know that's a big problem, I think, in the UK. Like the US, they sort of have that kind of dream big, do big things. But I know that, I lived in London for several years as well, and I think that's a big problem in the UK. Even like my interactions with people online, you'll see somebody pointing out a new way of looking at things, a new way of doing business, and the comments is just full of people going, yeah, it's not possible for me, or some variation of that. And I think that one of the biggest things that is really holding people back is feeling like it's not possible for them. And I love that you're placing that focus on, like, let's show you that it is possible, and that it is possible for you. Because my line of work, I also see that all the time with people that I talk to and help, is that the thing that's holding them back is their own belief that it's not possible, and they're focusing on finding all of these reasons and excuses why they can't do something. But then, you can switch it and start looking at all of the things that are possible, and all the ways that we can find pathways forward. And when you start doing that, then things actually start working out, and you start moving in that right direction. I'm curious with you, you've grown this agency. You said you've started back in 2020.
Correct.
So you've been doing it for 5 years now. You've reached what many people would consider a massively successful agency, upwards around the 100K a month mark. What's driving you now? What is it about growing the agency that is motivating to you, and why do you do it? Why are you motivated to do all these things?
So for me, it's about the people around me, and not just me. Like I live quite a nice lifestyle. I'm able to do a lot of things that I previously wasn't able to do, and can kind of exercise my free will around that. But for me now, it's kind of building that legacy for people around me. Like my parents aren't getting any younger. My dad's due to retire next year, so being able to make sure that my mum and dad can have a nice retirement together, enjoy their golden years, as they call it, where they can, travel a lot more and experience some nicer things. Again, my son and my wife, growing up, we weren't kind of hard done by any means, but there was a lot of opportunities that were off the table for us purely because of a financial kind of barrier. So for us and our children to be able to have those opportunities that we didn't have is hugely, hugely important. Like when I was growing up, my dream was always that I was going to be an F1 driver. I kind of got to the point where you have to really start paying to get through the different levels, and as a family, we just couldn't afford it. So that's an opportunity that I never got to pursue, and it could have been me on Sunday lifting up that World Drivers' Championship instead of Lando. But so for my kids to be able to have those opportunities, if that's something they want to pursue, then absolutely. But yeah, it's just that legacy for them, and having the positive impact. I know I can't take the money with me when it all comes to an end, but if I can have used that as a vehicle for good, then I think that's probably the most important thing that drives me. I'm also deathly afraid of just having lived a very average life. I don't want to get to the end of my life when my body's not working how it used to, and there's certain things that I can't do anymore, and just having the regret of, I wish I'd done that. Looking back at something and saying, I wish I'd had the balls to go for that opportunity. I wish I'd been able to travel to this place, or I wish I'd, gone and experienced that thing, but no longer being able to do so because I didn't take the risks. That's a huge kind of fear of mine, because I don't get another go at this. That's a really big thing that I believe in. I don't get to have a go. There's no level 2, there's no pause button, there's no rewind. So having no regrets when it comes to the end is a huge thing. And again, showing my kids that to just open your arms and your eyes to the world and have the balls to take those opportunities and those risks.
So do you think that's firstly, I think that's also so useful to know, because understanding where the motivations come from people that are already achieving great things is very useful for those of us who are not quite as far ahead as you. So you're really using motivation to help those around you, your family, your son, as a motivating factor, and you're looking at the future and going, I don't want to look back on this time and think I wasted it. I wasted my potential. So one of the things I'd love to ask is, has your motivation sort of changed over the time? Because you've been through this journey over the past 5 years, and you started out at nothing as far as the agency was going. What was motivating you at the beginning? Was it the same things that are motivating you now?
Largely, I think it does. For me, it's kind of shifted a little bit. So largely, like those same things that motivate me now, especially around my family and my parents, still really motivate me. But it was more so when I started. It was the money aspects. That was always the kind of biggest motivator. Of I realised that money was the vehicle to get me out of the situation that I was in. I was in a lot of debt when I started my business. I'd never had a salary more than about $2,500 a month. And being on a young lad on a relatively good salary for my wage, a lot of that went into various pubs, clubs and establishments around the various cities that I was living in at the time. So kind of having that money, that was the big driving force behind it. And then once you kind of have a bit more cash in the bank and you have a steadier kind of cash flow coming into the business and into your personal account, it does kind of shift, because you realize the opportunities that are now available to you just because you can afford to pay for certain things, or you understand how to get those things, not necessarily in exchange for cash.
Was there a certain figure, once you had a certain figure in your bank, where you're like, okay, I've got enough, or how can I rephrase that? Was there this time where you're like, okay, I'm no longer in this survival mode?
No, there wasn't a set figure, to be fair. I think the first time we got debt free, or I got debt free, that was pretty freeing and releasing. It's like a big weight on your shoulders. I know different people have different experience with debt, but for me, I very much used to bury my head. I'd see the letters coming through because I'd missed a payment, and I'd, instead of just kind of phoning them up, having an honest conversation and saying, look, can we spread the cost of this? What can we do to help? I would just throw the letters in the bin, and that has a huge impact on credit and your opportunities going forward to be able to get that. So for me, once that was kind of cleared and out of the way, and I realized the importance of that was huge. But no, there wasn't like a set number that I hit and I was like, oh my God, I've made it. It was kind of a gradual realization of what was available.
I want to get more into, because I'm really interested in the journey that you've been through when it comes specifically to growing your agency. What was kind of the trajectory, like from start to, how long, for example, did it take you to get to that 10K a month amount, and what was happening in that time?
So we formed January 2020. And I think like most ad agencies that started at the time, we went into helping like local businesses, so local restaurants, places like that. We'd got to about 5,000 or 6,000 a month. And we did that within the first 90 days, which was great.
Wow. Nice.
And then all of a sudden, towards the end of March, lockdown happened in the UK. The world went batshit crazy. Everything just stopped. And obviously hospitality was probably the biggest sector that was hit at the time. And obviously with all of our clients being in hospitality, we lost around about 95% of that revenue overnight. I think I had 2 clients left that were able to do the kind of adopt into the takeaway model because they had the facilities for that anyway. That kind of said, could you help us do this? And kind of had that realization that they needed to adapt. So yeah, we went from all of a sudden having, £5,000 or £6,000 a month coming into the business to £750 a month coming into the business, which when it's your kind of lifeblood and your lifeline and you've got, bills to pay yourself, your cash reserves start to dwindle very, very quick. And a lot of businesses were able to get help with rate relief, being completely online. We were exempt from all of that. So we kind of just had to figure it out. So that was a bit of a, at the time, I thought it was the biggest kick in the dick I would ever receive in business. And that's been proved to be wrong time and time again.
Okay.
But you kind of, it starts that roller coaster because it's never a linear kind of growth. Post lockdown, we started to recover. We started to help hospitality businesses get out of that. Started to work a lot more with e-commerce over that kind of period and shifting into that, which I think was a big shift for a lot of people. But then also helping a lot of trades businesses kind of recover, post COVID as well. And then from there, we've never posted a loss, which is good. But we've also grown year on year. And it's kind of that forward momentum. I feel once we got to last year was our biggest year for growth. I think it was like a 270% increase in revenue on the year before. And for us, I know it's not the same for a lot of agencies, but for us, that was all built on the relationships that we had built, the clients that we'd helped, the personal brand that I had built around myself and the clients that I was helping, and also the kind of reputation of the agency. It opened up some doors. So December 2024, we signed our largest client to date, which really helped grow our kind of our bottom line revenue. With that came a large commission deal, which again was great for cash flow. But then the relationships that those type of businesses have, 8, 9, 10 figure businesses, that opens the door to more 8, 9, 10 figure businesses. We've been able to secure a lot of the contracts from that. We still help the kind of the SMEs as well, but it was able to open a lot of the contracts. We're in the process of getting the agency compliant enough to be able to fulfill government and more commercial contracts through tendering processes. That's a big kind of revenue line that we've never really explored, but I feel we're missing out on. So we're in the process of going through all the formalities for that, which is a lot of red tape, a lot of this document isn't written in the correct way and you've missed an apostrophe here and all of that kind of stuff that you can imagine comes with working at government level contracts. So yeah, that was kind of a real big kind of explosion. Earlier this year, so we hit our first 100k months. January and February hit our first 100k months, then bought another agency, which as a group has kind of increased the revenue. We bought another agency last month. So the value has gone up. The agency, my main agency, we kind of scaled down a little bit because I realized the structure wasn't in place to sustain 100k long term, and we would have just been keeping the clients, not being able to service them correctly for the sake of it and for the ego of having 100k a month coming into Stripe. So we kind of deliberately scaled back a little bit, which is always a difficult decision. But for the kind of overall business health, it was the right thing to do at the time. So yeah, it's been a very up and down journey. Obviously, there's been times when we never thought we were going to make it. I tried to sell once in 2023, restructured the entire business for how the buyer or the potential buyer wanted it to look, to realize that on the day of completion, he was just a bit of a pipe dreamer, hadn't done half the stuff he was telling us he was doing in terms of securing funding for the acquisition or anything like that. So that was a huge kick in the teeth because we lost a lot of money and a lot of time, which I think was the biggest thing for me was time. We've, had business deals that have gone wrong when we've tried to acquire agencies, long drawn out legal processes that, cost money in solicitors and advisors and Nobody really wins from that situation. It's just an argument on either side, and nobody wins apart from the solicitor in the middle.
Yep.
So if you ever really, really wanted to make big money, become a litigation solicitor is why, because the amount those people earn is unreal. So yeah, it's had its up and downs. Obviously, started and growing a business through a global pandemic was never easy. A lot of challenges thrown in the way there. Running a business under a Labour government is never easy because there's a lot of challenges that get thrown in the way financially there. Yeah, it's been a rough ride, but for the most part, it's been on an upward trajectory. But I feel like those problems that you get, they're always a little bit tougher as you grow, and it's a bigger problem. Like, I remember back during lockdown, and it was like choosing between the kind of the money we had coming in. It was choosing between where we were able to do the shop that month, were we kind of on the yellow label stuff, or were we able to, go and buy actually what we wanted rather than just kind of what we needed? As where now the biggest problem is how much money I've got to send to HMRC every month. It's not trying to keep a roof over our heads anymore. It's, are the team getting what they want? How, are the clients getting fulfilled correctly? Are they happy? How do we get to this next level? How do I overcome this problem that's been thrown to me by someone that we're looking at buying, and, all that kind of stuff. So the problems change. And I think that's a good thing. I think that having bigger problems is a good thing.
I suppose it at least keeps it interesting, right? At least you've got different problems to deal with.
If it was easy, everyone would do it, and we'd all be millionaires.
No, that's true. That's true. I want to know what the because I think a lot of my audience are probably going to be at the lower end of the scale. I'm wondering, in your experience now, looking back, what are the fundamentals that people need to be focusing on if they're trying to grow from, practically nothing to, let's say, 10,000 a month in the online space, whether that's as an ad agency or another online space?
Okay, so I think it comes down to three things, crucially. There's a lot more that goes into it, but I think the base of it is three things. So it's knowing your audience, so who you serve, solving a specific problem for them, and then knowing your numbers around that. I think there's three biggest things. So knowing your audience and who you serve. Business owners isn't a niche. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in the online space. Who do you serve? Everyone. No, you don't. Business owners isn't a niche. Knowing what problem you solve for them. So instead of just going, I'm going to do XYZ, I'm going to run ads for, let's say, I don't know, roofers, for example, because the house across the road is having their roof done. Roofers might not, or that roofing business in your area might not need ads, for example. So creating a solution that's actually tailored towards what your audience needs, but then knowing your numbers inside out. If you can't at any point tell me how many pieces of outreach you need to be doing, how many leads your business needs, what your sale price is, to be able to kind of predictably bring that revenue in, then you're never going to grow, because you're just kind of firing into the dark and hoping something sticks. So if you know exactly how many leads you need, how many conversations you need to be having, how many of those need to turn into sales calls, and what your conversion rate off the back end of that, that's the biggest thing. And then I suppose the fourth thing is just doing that with violent effort every single month.
That's an interesting one. Also crucial. Just really actually going flat out, full tilt as much as possible. When it comes to knowing who you serve, like knowing your audience, and knowing what problem you help them solve, how can people really figure that out without going, oh, I do X, and then again, sort of shooting into the dark?
So it's a little bit, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like, I understand the question you asked, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but it's getting out there and speaking to those people. Especially if I had to start again. So if there's anyone watching this who is kind of really, really at the beginning of their journey, and I had to start again in creating an ad agency, this applies for any business, by the way. What I would do is I would look at the people who I want to serve, and I'd go on Google Maps, and I would create a list of 50 of those businesses in my area that I wanted to help. Mm-hmm. What I would then do is I would outreach to all of them and say, look, we're a brand new agency. This is what we're offering. I've got nothing to sell you right now. All I want is 20 minutes of your time to ask you some questions. is it okay if we were to come into, the business or just do it over Zoom or, whatever? Absolutely zero to sell right now. I just want to kind of understand what you guys need a little bit better and understand the niche. Out of those 50, 60, 70 businesses, you're going to get 5 or 10 people that are going to turn around and say, I'll have a conversation with you. That's not a problem. 20 minutes isn't a lot. I would then go in and I'd ask the really, really, important questions. Like, you need to understand the customer journey. You need to understand what it is they're offering. You need to understand who their audience is, but also the problems that they have in getting more customers through the door, for example. I'd do that over, 5, 6, 7, 8 businesses, however many say yes, come and speak to us. Minimum of 5, 10 is ideal. I would then go away and I'd look at what are the common problems that they have and what's the solution that I can provide to that. What's a skill that I have or a skill that I can learn that can provide the solution to that. I would then go away and build that product, and I would then phone those 10 people up and I would say, hey, Joel, it's Mark again. I really want to thank you for your time last month. I've taken everything you've said on board. This is the problem that you're having. I think I've created a solution. As a thank you, I'd like to run this for you for free or for very, very cheap for the first month. After 30 days, can we have a conversation about if this is a viable solution for you, and see what that relationship looks like? 9 times out of 10, you will get someone that says yes, and that's your first foot in the door. And then you can start to gather that data again and again and again and repeat that process. I've seen that happen 3 or 4 times, and very, very quickly, that person has got to 20, 30, 40K a month because they were able to just kind of put their ego aside, realize that that's what they needed to do to get through the foot through the door, and actually doing something about it instead of hypothesizing and watching YouTube. If you go out and you speak to the people you need to serve or you want to serve, find out what the problem is, solve it for them. People are going to take a chance on that because you've taken the time to understand their problems.
That's great advice. I think I'm just listening to you speak. I'm like, I need to do that. Yep, I need to do that. Yeah, great. Okay. And so, and I think what you said in there about it quickly sort of snowballing and taking off, because I think, one of the hesitancy is often in those sorts of situations thinking, oh God, I've got to work for free, or I'm practically working for free. And it's easy to start to think that that's the trajectory that things kind of stay on. And, but also getting a feel for, that's just the beginning, but it doesn't stay like that for long. And then if you kind of keep that attitude, it really ramps up. Those companies or those agencies that you saw do really well following that process. What was the time frame that you kind of saw?
So it's different for every agency. There's a few kind of factors in it, mostly being the person driving it. But I mean, we saw one, they went from kind of doing that. They went from around about 2,000 a month of just kind of pissing in the wind, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, to kind of really taking that direction. They went from 2 to 30 pretty quick. I think that was it within like 90 days. They did that.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really quick. There was a couple of issues that we had to, face along that way as well, because all of a sudden you've got issues with fulfillment because you've signed that many clients you need to be able to fulfill. So it's then building the system to be able to hire, bring people in. But, again, that's a different problem to have. We had another agency who, she was a bit of a solopreneur. And she was, starting at nothing, realized that she wanted to help solo businesses. Her husband worked inside of a solo business, and was just consistently moaning about the processes and stuff. So she was like, well, I can solve that. She went from 0 to around about 20 to 25 within the first kind of 6 months. Again, she was trying to figure that out on her own. And then we've had guys that have skyrocketed. I mean, I've got a guy now who, when he come to us, I've got the conversation on Instagram from the other day, actually. When he come to us, his fiance was pregnant and he was forever getting parking tickets at the hospital because he couldn't afford to pay for the parking going for the maternity appointments. Now his business is at 60K a month. They've just bought their second house. He's just bought a brand new Rolex for his dad. He's retired his mum in the last 12 months on a 35K a year salary. And he's done all of that within the past 18 months.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
he was, mature enough to realize that he needed to eat shit for a little bit, or carry on eating shit for a little bit, to be able to really kind of get the rewards off the back end of it. And yeah, he's absolutely flying. I have no doubt that one day his agencies will be bigger than mine. Absolutely no doubt about it.
All right. What's your, because you mentioned fulfillment there, and I think that's another fear. I know that I have that, thinking about, oh, well, if I get, so many clients, how am I going to fulfill? What would your advice be for anybody in that situation who's worried about whether they're going to be able to handle the workload that comes from doing the right things?
So do it properly the first time.
What does properly mean?
So the biggest mistake that I made when I first started out was I understood the process because I'd learned the process and I'd kind of built it within the agency. But I realized that very, very quickly, when you grow, if you haven't documented that and you keep everything inside there, other people that you hire into your business don't have the same knowledge or level of knowledge that you might, or they can't read your mind. Like, they're not mind readers. So when I say do it properly, I mean document what you're doing, build it as a system and as a process. There's great tools that can help you do it. Scribe is a great one that will help you do it. Loom, again, is another great tool, especially if you pay for Loom Pro. So now whenever we're recording a new process or recording an SOP, what we'll do is we'll screen record what we're doing. So it could be setting up an ad, for example. We'll screen record what we're doing. The video will take a transcript of that, and then you can have it rewrite it as an SOP. So it takes exactly what you've said. You've got the written format with the video at the bottom, and then saving that into the SOP bank, essentially. So that's the biggest piece of advice in terms of the fulfillment. Knowing your capacity. So typically, you're probably going to be at your maximum capacity, depending on what the business is, around about 8 to 10 clients each. I've seen some perverts be able to handle like 15, quite sustainably, but they're just a different breed of individual. So being able to understand your capacity, and then recognizing that that's when you need to bring some help in. And then that comes back to the first point that I said of, being able to trust someone and learning when to delegate that, kind of helps you build that fulfillment cycle.
That's great advice. Yeah. So really trying to systematize right from the beginning, or at least document so you can systematize it later on.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I suppose that, with tools like Scribe and, AI, ChatGPT, Claude and things like that, that the process of doing that has become so much easier. And by using the tools available now, you can collect and collate that data in real time, so that you've got this massive bank of information of, how your business operates, so that when you come to needing to train somebody else, it's all there already.
Yeah, it's so easy. I remember when I first started, you have to write everything out, or you're paying someone to write everything out. And now, we can hop on a team call, we can have AI record the call. 20 minutes after, the SOPs that we've discussed in there have been built and they've been distributed into the correct place without anyone having to lift a finger. So it's great. Always proofread them though. I've fallen short of that a couple of times. Make sure you always proofread what AI tells you.
What problems have you got from not doing that?
ChatGPT, I think, is probably the worst for it, of just kind of adding stuff in or adding references in that aren't like strictly true. So like we've asked it before, could you provide some statistics around checkout funnels, for example, and it's come out with some kind of wild numbers, and then you look at it and you go, that doesn't quite look right. So you ask ChatGPT, have you fact checked this? Oh no, I haven't. And you're like, right, okay. So you go and do the actual research and you realize the numbers are a lot different. So yeah, we've had that before. We've had it where it's not proofread documents before sending to people. And there's bits of information that we didn't want being sent, or there's parts of training conversations from the next part that have been included. So all of a sudden they're looking at this and they're like, why the fuck are you discussing dinner plans in an email with me? Sorry, that's just what's happened off the back of the transcript. So yeah, there's a couple of things there that of course help.
That's great advice. Well, before we wrap up, I'm wondering if you've got do you have any other advice, any tips that you could give somebody out there who is in that beginning phase, to help them along their journey, and maybe any advice you've got for people that are more up at that level that you're at, or close to it and wanting to grow past it?
Yeah. Your education and your team's education around your core expertise is always going to be the best investment you will ever make. That's something that I wish I'd realized sooner. I thought, why do I need to pay someone to teach me this when I can get it on YouTube for free, which to the most part you can. But it's always a lot better having that community aspect of it, and, learning from other people's mistakes. Other piece of advice, it's going to be hard. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. What you see on social media is only a snippet of it. I'm actually doing a great piece on my Facebook at the moment, of where I'm going back and I'm sharing my memories of what happened a year ago, but actually talking about the underlying feelings and emotions behind it, because on the surface it paints one picture, but in reality how I was feeling was probably quite different from the picture that I painted. So just kind of understanding that, people that make a lot of money online and that live quite a nice lifestyle and post it all over Instagram, that is only a small snippet of what you see. It's not all bad, but don't take it for granted. And the biggest piece of advice probably is don't be a dick. Genuinely, it goes a lot smoother and the world is a much better place if you can just be nice to each other. You don't have to like everyone. You don't have to agree with with everyone, sorry. But it's a lot easier if you're just not a dick about it.
I think that's a good core philosophy to have, I think.
Yeah. One of the main things. It's actually one of our qualifying kind of criteria when we work with a new business. At the bottom of the document, it's got, does this prospect sound like a dick?
You don't share that with the client though, do you?
No, they don't see that. That's just internal. Okay.
I was going to say, could you just confirm that you are not going to be a dick?
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Well, last final question. Is there anything that we haven't spoken about today that you would love to share, to mention before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. If anyone does have any kind of question, I'd like, to be fair, I'd quite like to open up my socials to this. So if anyone does have any questions for me about my journey, has related to anything, please do feel free to reach out on socials. I like to think I'm quite an approachable guy. So if you've got any questions, you need any advice, or you just you liked what we've spoken about and you can relate, please do, let me know, strike up a conversation. It's always good to kind of build that connection.
That was gonna be my next question, which is where can people get in touch? Where can they best get in touch with you if they want to reach out? Because I'm sure they will.
So Facebook is probably where I'm most active. So my Facebook profile is just Marc Clifford. I have two profiles on there. I've got a profile and a page. So the one with the short hair where I'm a lot skinnier is my main profile. Right. The one with the shaggier hair with my arms crossed is my business page. Either of those I'm quite active on, or I'm on Instagram at Marc PJ Clifford, if you wanted to reach on Instagram.
Yeah, perfect. No, we'll chuck a link to both of those profiles, both Instagram and Facebook, in the description below for anybody who wants to reach out, because I think I've really enjoyed our conversations in Facebook, and it's quite cool just connecting and then having. I mean, that's how this conversation came about as well, right? We exchanged a few comments and things on different posts, and just kind of get that feeling of, oh yeah, this person, they're interested in similar things. We kind of see the world in similar ways. And it's just a great way of creating connection in the online space and kind of getting a bit, just building the relationship a little bit more. So I highly recommend to anybody out there listening to go out and check out Marc on Facebook. Well worth it.
Thank you very much, Joe.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Marc. And we'll see you hopefully for another one sometime.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Thank you.